Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to all our viewers to this much anticipated episode of this Down to Earth Talk series hosted by the Catholic Youth Commission and the Franciscan Institute. My name is Annalisa Ramsahai, and I'm the Regional Program Coordinator for the Franciscan Institute. So a very special welcome to our two guest speakers for today, Angelo Kurbanali and Jenna-Leigh Metivier. Welcome to all our new viewers and partners of the Archdiocese of Port Spain who is celebrating this wonderful Season of Creation month. In case you have missed last week, we had some homework to do, and it was a question that we were all invited to contemplate. How can we or how can you transform this climate crisis into an opportunity for the earth? So this year, the theme for Season of Creation is a home for all, renewing the oikos of God. And both Sister Julie and Andre shared last week on their personal experience of what home is like for them and some practical tips on how we can renew our relationship with all of creation. What stood out for me is that how can you recycle the Catholic newspapers, the old ones? You know, it was really interesting and intriguing thoughts. So we want to explore today the connection of our Catholic faith in caring for creation. Yes, Catholics are called to care for creation, and our very first vocation given to us by God, our Creator, you will find out in this conversation. So I encourage our viewers to share the live, share this Facebook Live. Where are you from? Comment on the Facebook. Are you joining us from Miaro? Are you joining us from down the islands, Arima, Point, Labre, San Fernando, Port Spain, anywhere? Let us know where you're joining us from. Share your comments and questions. And we are here to listen to you. So we'll go into the introduction of our guest speakers today. And here is a brief bio of Jenna-Leigh Metivier. She is 24 years old and currently pursuing her master's degree after completing an undergraduate studies in geography and environmental management at University of the West Indies. She enjoyed living a natural lifestyle, and that is both good for her body and for the environment. So I love that description, Jenna-Leigh. Her love and deep appreciation for the earth came at a later stage in her life. And so she would like to encourage people to avoid what she did and begin now. So that question, really, I would love to hear more about that, Jenna-Leigh. So our next speaker, Angelo Kurbanali. He's 28 years old, and he's a theologian and a creative working person at the office of the youth ministry of the Catholic Youth Commission with a passion for social justice, including the environment. Right, so thank you both for joining us. So we'll go into the question. So can you share, both Angelo and Jenna-Leigh, as followers of Christ, what does our Catholic faith teaches us about the human vocation to till and keep God's garden? So what is this God's garden about?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us on, Lisa. So, sorry, my stream stuck a little bit just now, so I think I missed the last part of the question, but if I think I got what you was asking. In terms of like us being followers of Christ, like, to be Christian, I do think for us to take care of God's garden, it is a three-part call. Like when I think of God's garden, I think not simply of, how we would often talk about the Garden of Eden. I don't only think about that. I do think about, all of creation as God's garden, not just simply earth too, but, everything that at least we know of creation, because there's so much that we don't know. So in terms of, like I said, I think we are called in three different ways, could be more even. But when I hear it, the first thing I think of is when Christ was with the disciples and he gave the command for everyone to love one another, right? The famous love one another as I have loved you, right? I do think that to love isn't simply just to be, nice and show good things toward each human being, but I also think that, for us to love, it extends to all of creation, because I do think if we do the loving thing, the just thing with our fellow humans, it also does right by the environment. I think of, that Christ became flesh, that God, decided to become part of creation as well. And, we always say the word became flesh. But they also think, or what other translation I think of is, he pitched his tent, which reminds me a lot of this year's season of creation theme, the logo Abraham's tent. The same way Abraham pitched a tent, God came and pitched a tent among us. He made his home among us and in us in creation. There must be something divine about creation. I think that's the only way divinity could make itself part of creation, for creation to have, divine nature in it as well. And the third part of that call, I would say, is that we as humans, we have a responsibility to all of creation. In the same way that we, didn't just end up here, we would have evolved from, different aspects of creation and will continue to evolve. We owe it not only to from where we came, but also to where we're going. I think we do deserve to give our best at all times and also take care of God's garden in general. So I'd be interested to hear what Jenna has to say.
Yeah, it's very funny that I kind of have that same thought process as you when it comes to loving one another. So I also think about loving your neighbor as yourself. And if you really love your neighbor, as in outside of infatuation and all these nice little feelings that you may feel inside, you want good for them. And if you want good for them, we cannot destroy the earth, because that is where we all are. We're all existing here, So by loving your neighbor, you're trying to make them as comfortable as possible. And a lot of times I feel like when people think about climate change or the problems that the earth is experiencing, because we aren't experiencing it ourselves. So for example, in Trinidad and Tobago, we aren't feeling deep repercussions. A lot of times we don't think about those elsewhere in the world that may be feeling it. And if we don't change our actions, that's not necessarily showing love for your neighbor or for everyone else on earth, And well, I always think about it with the faith as well, something that actually, because like they said in the description, I only got a deep appreciation from the earth, like in my 20s, my early 20s. Before I used to think, okay, yeah, I have to take care of the earth, but what can I do, And it was only when I started to pursue my degree and really dive into also deepening my faith, I realized in this reading on Easter, the first reading that we have, Gloria Saturday from the Old Testament, in the beginning, God created all these lovely things. And on the sixth day, he would have created man, and then there's always this line that I always wondered why, and I got the answer when I read the Pope's message, Pope John Paul's message on the World Day of Peace. After he created man and he gave us the food and the trees to eat, etc., he said that it was very good, so all that he was created was very good. He entrusted the earth to us. And to me, if the Lord entrusted the earth to us, we have, like you said, a responsibility. Like, that's a privilege to me that the Lord thinks of me as capable, thinks of us as capable of taking care of the earth or capable of really cultivating it, that's a big responsibility. So I think when you think of it from that aspect and you look at all the small parts of Genesis and even in Psalms 24:1, where they have, the earth belongs to the Lord. So even though he entrusted it to us, it is not ours. It still belongs to him. But he trusts us enough and he gave us this responsibility to take care of it. And that's a privilege. That to me makes me feel very special, makes me feel like the Lord absolutely loves me, which he does, So when you look at it from that aspect of faith, I feel like it opens up your mind so much more with the teachings of the church. And I'm not very big, I'll be honest, I'm not very big in a lot of research with my faith, but I do see the benefits of researching. And when I fell in love with the environment and I realized that it actually has my faith has a role to play in it. It's not only my studies. That's when I started to research a lot, and I found the message from John Paul II. I read Genesis. I paid more attention in church. So if you just open your mind to do more research in the faith, you would see the beautiful things that the Lord would have entrusted to us. And you would feel that feeling that I am feeling too, that special feeling where he loves me so much that he literally is okay. Like he knows, he has faith in me to take care of the earth,
I mean, you saying that, Jenna, it reminds me of something where you said God gave it to us to take care of. And I think that's something we often misconstrue. The word we would use in the Catholic circle is stewardship, right? But we often hear, the words I think in the Bible are, God gave humanity dominion over the earth. And I don't know what part of history we decide to switch the word dominion and domination and think that we need to totally dominate and desecrate the earth rather than, take care of it. Like at some point or the other, we just decide, what? All this beauty, that you describe here is for us to use to just, to gain as much as we could, just to, I guess, feel good in this moment, rather than take care of it and help preserve it, and help it to glorify God ultimately, because when you talked about the Psalms too, it did remind me of one of the Psalms where there's a line that says, your creatures sing your praises and your friends will repeat them. And I hear that and I think, oh yeah, all God's creation will praise God each in its own way. And God's friends, I think, of us as humans, we're there to repeat it. But if we, causing, let's say, 2% of species to go extinct every year, right? Or polluting our waterways, or whatever the case might be. I mean, we know the list is very long of all the different ways we have, destroyed the earth. I do think that we're doing exactly the opposite of what God does call us to. Rather than take care of the environment and to help bring it into full flourishing, we just decide to use and abuse and to just continue, I guess, catering to our own selfish pleasures, thinking about absolutely nobody or anything else in the process.
Yeah, that's the thing too. When I read in Genesis that he entrusted, I was one of those people, honestly, earlier in my teenage years, like, oh, God entrusted, this one is mine, like, oh, this is so amazing. But he is the ultimate owner. And I like to think about it like an apartment complex. So he owns it, but he gave me to see about it, make sure people want to come and see it, and and that's a huge responsibility for me. So when that whole thing of dominating versus stewardship is something that we really have to clear up. And honestly, it's through research. And when I say research, I am not somebody that will dive deep. Like, even if you just type Catholicism and the environment, so many articles, the Pope's message will pop up, so it's so easy for us to see what our faith is really teaching us.
Mm-hmm. And I do think, like, as much as we might make it explicit, I do think to be for the environment is to be pro-life. We love to always talk about pro-life, right? And we think pro-life is just pro-birth or anti. Pro-life, like, we have to, if we take care of all of life, and if we do what's right by the poor, do what's right by those suffering the most from climate change, by taking care of the environment, we are being pro-life in that way, So I do think to take care of the environment is rooted very much in the whole idea of being pro-life as well.
Thank you so much to both of you. I'm really hearing that call to love one another, love our neighbors, love ourselves, love God, our creator, that whole call to really build that and renew that relationship. And what I love in your conversation, both of your conversation, is sharing that faith and experience, that conversion experience that you both are sharing. And as young people, this is what we want to hear. We want to hear about how it relates to us. How can it relate to you, and in turn we can build that culture of care, because we are called to care for everybody, and which is all of creation. And we want to continue this conversation because as young people, we want to see where we're heading for in the future, even our children, if we do decide that as our vocation too. So we are going to share what the Season of Creation Challenge is all about. And we are inviting you to take part in the Season of Creation Challenge. So we have a video to show for you. It is Malik. He is Malik Wilson, a Form 6 student of St. Mary's College. And he took part in the Season of Creation Challenge, and he wanted to express his talent on God's gift of creation for us. And he did it in a form of poem. Thank you.
God's tiny creatures are everywhere, on all the lands and in the air. Everywhere you look, there is proof of God's creation and His truth. Various creatures in a wide array are on this earth and on display, placed by God for all men to see, while pointing hearts to eternity. They are placed by God's hand as evidence to help all understand that all of creation is of the Lord, and it's a truth not to be ignored, as all will stand before the Creator, but do all accept Him as their Savior. The truth alone will judge all men, as all other theories will be condemned. Men may deny of God's truth, but they will stand without excuse. For God says through Revelation, truth is stamped on His creation. Learned men cannot comprehend real truth, not devised by them. And God's truth still stands on its own, and it exists through God alone. All God's truth and eternal design goes far above the learned mind. It's only simple faith that you need to look at creation and to believe that the eternal God created it all for man. All alone is awfully small, and the man's mind is smaller still, that continues to reject God's will. God's existence does not need man, but we were put into God's plan. God will continue on, they will see, continue on through all of eternity. It's those who reject God's creation who can't embrace His salvation, but they will understand and will see that He is the God of all eternity. Thank you.
So that was just a lovely way of sharing Malik's talents and his contemplative and reflective way of God, our creator, and our call, as Angelo and Jenna-Leigh spoke about, our call to care, our call to care for the earth, our common home, this garden God asked us to till and keep. And we're talking about stewardship, as Angelo had shared with us, and this is our dominion of the earth. And we want to go into the question, that real question, both Jenna-Leigh and Angelo. So as a young person, how would you envision the earth to be like in 2071?
That's a really interesting question, 30 years from now. And I don't know if I have one solid answer, so I'll give my best to explain why. Currently, as a youth on social media and seeing all these different things, I do have a sense that people, especially younger, the younger generation, they're getting decent idea of the problems that the earth is facing and the importance of being more green, whether it is just a random small social media post or whether it is like small businesses promoting a bamboo straw, metal straw, etc., and trying to change our lifestyle. So I would say that it is more prominent amongst the youths now, but I'm hoping that it isn't a trend and that it can continue for a couple of years or maybe forever, you know, like people will make a lifestyle change instead of it being, okay, well, just a trend in 2021 And then when COVID is done, back to being normal, you know. So I hope that if this trend continues, I am hopeful that the earth may be a bit greener. Hopefully climate change may be limited. We may see more trees instead of deforestation, and, you know, pollution may be limited as well, because we just bringing it back to question one as well. We think about what the earth, or what our neighbors would experience, you know, what our fellow citizens and the people of earth, etc. And I always remember from last week's conversation, Sister Julie said, the first thing we need to do is fall in love with the earth. And I thought that was so beautiful. Like I was blown away when she said that. And I said, that is so true. And so if we can, like, take action and really just start to appreciate the beauty, the natural beauty of the earth, the beaches, the scenery, everything, I feel like this trend will continue, and I'm hopeful and positive that the earth may have any small change, you know, any small change in the right direction in the next 30 years. I don't know if Angelo shares the same thing as me, but yeah.
No, very similar actually. As the thing, I would say, if I had to envision the world years from now, to be honest, I'm not optimistic. You know, I really am not. But on the other side, I am hopeful. So even though I might be optimistic, I'm hopeful. I know it sounds like the same word, but I guess I think more that, you know, thinking of this activist in the States, Mariam Kaba, she says, you know, hope is not an emotion, but it is a discipline, right? And I think that, like, I think in just the recent IPCC report they would have put out recently, you know, and we're talking about, oh, code red, and we always hearing like, you know, 2030 is what we have to get our act in order because, you know, it rising by like 1.5 degrees or much ever. And I guess I look around, you know, see the news and whatnot too, and I know that it seems like a lot constantly because of social media and all this, you know, easy access to news. But it really does seem like we are headed very fast toward a dead end. And that, I don't have a lot of optimism in that sense, but I also feel like we have the ability to turn things around, at least somewhat, to mitigate the damage and be able to catch ourselves just in time. So while I can't speak to the guarantee of that taking place, I do think the possibility at least is there. And for that reason, I am hopeful that we could do better.
Angelo and Jenna-Leigh, you know, I really love this conversation because it relates directly to what both of you shared. How do we till and keep the garden, the God's garden that he gave us? And I'm sure either you, either people at the U Commission, those in Facebook Live has been going through flood lately, right? So we are seeing some sort of impact of climate change that we're experiencing right here in our home. And the question that I'm going to ask both of you, what can we do? Is it trending that we are only going to use bamboo straws, let's say? What more can we do as youths to build a better future for ourselves and for our children who are going to be living in this earth, especially in our country?
For me, I think the first thing that we have to do is get our research done, and not necessarily, like I said, you know, you don't have to spend hours on Google and hours on things, but when you see a post on social media, besides just reposting it to your story, you know, try to really read about what that post is talking about. So whether it's like an oil spill or flooding in China or anything like that, or even the fact that we have more hurricanes appearing and more tropical storms in the Caribbean. So, you know, there's so many things that are happening around us. And, you know, people may be like, well, you know, this is just a bad hurricane season. There's a reason why it's a bad hurricane season. The earth is getting hotter and the waters are, you know, accommodating to hurricanes being created. So I would say start off with the small social media posts that you may see, but go a little deeper than the social media posts and do some research. And then when you do your research, you can look within yourself too. What can I do on an everyday basis that can help me, or that can help the earth, that can help the future, because we also have to think about our neighbors that aren't born yet and that are coming in the future, you know. So that's my advice. Start with a little bit of research, and honestly, it'll grab you. It'll grab your attention, because you're going to be like, these statistics are crazy. So it'll really keep you going.
I agree. I do think it starts, I think it is a both and sort of approach where we have, you know, things on the micro level and the macro level. So when I say micro, I mean, like you said, Jenna, you know, from the individual level, what can I do, you know, whether it's recycling or to use my talents, whether, you know, creative or in the science field or whatever the case might be, to be able to do what I could do today. But I also think on a collective level, I do think we need to have, you know, proper policies in place. I think faith-based policies at that, and to have them enforced as well. And when I say faith-based policies, I don't simply
Okay, so I think we lost Angelo there.
back
Angelo,
again.
okay.
Sorry, what was the last thing? What was the last thing I heard?
Faith-based.
Faith-based policies, right? Okay, yeah, sorry, internet, you know, technology imperfect. But yeah, I do think we need to have faith-based policies, right? Especially with all the work Francis has been putting in recently with Laudato Si and with Fratelli Tutti. And when I say faith-based policies, I don't simply mean that based on scripture alone, as important as that is, but I do think our faith is very much rooted in our everyday experience, you know? And I believe that we need to have conversations with people who are affected most by climate change. I mean, to be honest, I think in right now, a time Annalisa took us to a place called Coruscant, and you know, these people, they don't have high-born water, and they suffer directly because of rampant capitalism. You know, they talk, the kind of stories they hear, they talk about, one of the examples I remember is that they said there was like a hill, must be about 300 feet high or something, and you know, after people come through and have to, you know, destroy all the resources, there's now a crater there. So from a hill, it moved to a crater, and they are suffering directly because of water pollution and whatnot after that. Like, we need to very much have policies in place that protect the poor, you know, protect the people that suffer from climate change the most, you know, because until we could do that, it's going to be a bunch of lip service. You know, everybody's always talking about, yeah, you know, Pope Francis have a lot of good things to say. Okay, yeah, but the world leaders need to step up as well, very much, and, you know, do their part, because the church can't do it alone. None of us could do it alone, all right? Like, we could all do it together, but none of us could handle it by ourselves, only with the help of one another.
Excellent, excellent conversations, both Jenna-Leigh and Angelo. And, you know, it's stimulating so many ideas. And I want to challenge you youths. What more can we do? And as Catholics, do you think you can challenge the church right here in Trinidad and Tobago? Do you think we can go to His Grace Archbishop Jason Gordon and say, well, Archbishop, is there a policy in place to help us and help build Trinidad and Tobago, especially to better care for the earth, our home? So generally, I know you have a background in geography and environmental management, similarly to Angelo, who have a background in theology, and you all could both come together and put your ideas, and we could really make a difference, especially in terms of helping the youth leadership. Everybody can come together because we are all living this same earth that we have to pass on. So this conversation can go so much longer. I'm very sorry that we have to wind down and, you know, close our session for today. And I'd like to thank both of you, Jenna-Leigh and Angelo, for your great passion and sharing, especially that faith and experience sharing of, you know, your both ecological conversion and your knowledge in our faith. And we have some scriptures that we can reflect on in Genesis and even in the Psalms for those who are looking at scriptures and wondering, where can I get care for creation on? And as Jenna-Leigh shared, there are many research out there. We can go to Google University and find it. Right, so I'd like to thank the Catholic Youth Commission for making this possible, together with all of the various commissions in the Archdiocese of Port of Spain. You all have been tremendous in partnering and promoting the Season of Creation Month, which is a month, you know, put out internationally. We're calling all Christians to care and renew our relationship with God, our Creator, and the earth. So thank you to all those who have organized this event. And we are looking towards continuing this conversation next week. And the topic is going to be life on earth today, but what about tomorrow? Imagine that. And we'll be joining by for the fantastic Father Hugh Logan from Grenada. And stay tuned for more. I'd like to thank all our viewers who have joined here on the live, who are looking on the recording, who are sharing this message with your parish, with your youth group, with your confirmation or First Communion classes. And I encourage you to join this session for next week. Before we close, I would like to share with you another Season of Creation Challenge video. And this is from a youth. Her name is Zion Jean-Baptiste. She is going to school at Maria Regina Grade School. And she has a fantastic artistic vision of sharing how can she use her talent in participating for the Season of Creation Challenge, but also in creating awareness in caring for the earth. Thank you.
My name is Zion Jean-Baptiste, and this is my art piece for Jubilee of the Earth. My inspiration for this art piece was the concept of a flower in bloom in all its glory. This season of creation is about the earth being its finest and blossoming with the help of all people of the earth. Only by conservation, recycling, and life preservation can the earth fully achieve this season of Jubilee and create awareness of what we need to do.